Okay, welcome to this webinar. Thanks for joining us. Most of the audience has now arrived, so we'll make a start. Before we get into the meat of the presentation, I'll briefly mention what is coming up. There are three webinars in the series. First one, this introductory one, will include a demonstration of Gorkana surveys, briefly talking about some of the features of our approach to conducting fast polls and longer surveys. We'll then talk about how and why surveys are useful and how they can be used to benefit your clients' PR programs. This will be done by running through some use cases to demonstrate the value of surveys. The second webinar, this time next week, will run through the creative considerations of how to devise great surveys, including how to frame your questions and the considerations that always need to be borne in mind to get the most from your survey-based PR. The final webinar, to be held at this time in 2 weeks, will cover practical rules for helping you write great questions so that your answers are as accurate, objective, and as easy to interpret as possible. This will end with a demonstration of how to get the best from your results so that the findings are as interesting as they can be so they reach the ultimate goal of creating successful PR. And I'll start immediately with a brief demonstration of Gorkana surveys. Gorkana Surveys is a self-service market research solution designed especially for the PR industry. There are no monthly contracts, no cost for registration. To use Gorkana Surveys, simply go to www.gorkanasurveys.com and set up your account. It is free to do so. You will then be good to go for your first survey. So I'm just going to quickly set up a survey, a 2-question survey. So I put in my title, so I recognize what it is next time I see it. And I have a survey wizard that takes me through the process. The first step is to enter your question. So I will answer a question about pensions. So do you think currently saving for retirement? And you can add more answers here, but I'm going to just put yes and no. At this point you could add more questions, which we're going to do here. So I'm going to add another question. And the question is, what do you tend to do when it comes to retiring? The answers could be continue working, work part-time, I'm going to add some more answers, so I'll add 3 more answers to this question. People will be relying on state pension, rely, private pension, and I think there'll be some people who are not sure. So there's your questions. There are 2 questions. Second question has 5 answers. You can add more answers. You can add an image. You can add, make it multi-choice. In this case, I'm going to make it multiple answers, so they can choose. Respondents can choose more than one answer. And I'm going to also make it as possible so the answers are randomized to avoid any order bias. Additionally, I'm going to show this answer, I'm not sure, last. Okay, so when you're happy with your questions, press continue, and the survey wizard will take you through the remainder of the process. The next stage is to decide whether you want to target or not. In this case, we're asking people what they're going to do when they come to retirement. So we're going to ask people who are under 60, i.e. coming up to retirement or possibly coming up to retirement. On this page, you also choose the number of respondents you want. So in this survey, we are going to ask 500 respondents. price goes up as you ask more respondents. Continue through to the next page of the survey wizard. You have two possible choices in terms of scheduling. You can schedule it as soon as possible. You can set a time at a date or time in the future to coincide with a marketing event or an event you know that's coming up. You could also decide whether you want to repeat your survey. So you could repeat it either indefinitely or limited number of times at intervals of, say, 30 days, 12 times for 30 days, i.e. once a month for a year. In this case, we're not going to repeat this survey. We are going to run it immediately now and not repeat. So I'll continue through to the next stage of the survey wizard, which is the copyright page. We have two copyright options. There's owned and there's licensed. If you own the data, the data will be yours forever and will not be seen by anyone at all. If you license the data, we may take a look after 3 months and we may decide that the survey was really interesting and we might write a blog piece about it. We may then contact you to see if that's fine. If we continue through the next page, the final screen is the confirmation screen. You have a chance here to edit any part of your survey. If you're happy with the survey, you just press submit. Just press submit, and it will then go live. After you submit it, it is reviewed by a trained market researcher, and if the survey benefits from any changes, it will be returned to you with advice, at which point you can make the changes and resubmit the survey. Assuming the survey is fine to go ahead, it is then moderated and will go live. So I'll leave that one there, and we'll come back to that, but leave it running whilst we go through the rest of the webinar. It is now live, running across our network of partner sites, which include free ad sites, charity sites, newspaper and information sites that are visited by over 4 million unique visitors each month. Visitors to those sites are intercepted with a call to action and a survey. They are recruited using an established market research technique called river sampling that has been employed in market research for about 2 decades. We've developed this thing further by profiling visitors to partner sites so that we can recognize them when they return and can target by their key demographics. So, as in this survey, we are targeting people who are under 60 only. Whilst the survey is running live, I'm going to run through some examples of when to use surveys. I'll show how surveys can be used to help you gain coverage for your brand as well as gaining insights for consumers. The first use case I will discuss is PR surveys, how they can be useful and why to do them. I will then discuss newsjacking in the form of the naked print story in Las Vegas and planjacking in the form of the iPhone launch. Both of these approaches are effective ways of using surveys to keeping a conversation going and stimulating debate in the press, blogs and social media. I'll also cover a current use of crisis monitoring using the 2022 World Cup in Qatar crisis. Finally, before looking at the results of the survey that is running, I'll briefly cover how surveys can have a role to play in creating content that helps you get noticed in the form of Twitter marketing. Tip number 1, you should consider using a survey when you want to find a compelling angle or a hook for your story, or if you need content for a press release and think some data will help you get noticed or support the angle you're proposing. A recent estimate put the number of stories that were published that had as their basis some survey stats at 25,000 annually, the majority of which were specifically commissioned to achieve this coverage. These stories can be seen on a daily basis in a variety of different publications and are sometimes gathered in summary form once a week by publications like Time Out or Metro in the form of interesting survey stats that they have seen. Most of these were not long surveys but produced a nugget of information that secured their place in the press on subjects as diverse as dieting, the Great British Breakfast, the amount parents read to their children, and staycationing in the UK, all of which were sponsored by a brand keen to gain coverage. In the second and third webinars, We will be covering the creative side of how to create great surveys and the importance of linking these surveys to your brand. The final webinar will cover some practical rules for making surveys work better for you. The staycationing PR achieved by Travelodge recently in the Mirror is an excellent example of survey-based PR that establishes a strong raison d'etre between the brand, in this case budget hotels, and the topic of research, saving money by vacationing in the UK. The press release about which were the top 10 resorts in the UK neatly married the survey, the client's properties, in this case their hotels, and advice on how to save money, perfect for a piece of PR from a budget hotel chain in the Mirror. My second tip is to use research when you want to be part of the news agenda. This involves seeing a story and immediately being able to conduct a survey that will build on the story and that you consider will be of interest to journalists. An example of using surveys for newsjacking is some research we conducted after we saw The Sun had printed the pictures of Prince Harry naked in Las Vegas. Knowing this was a potentially controversial move, we ran a survey by 9 AM after seeing the pictures in The Sun. Soon after the survey was running, we knew the direction of the results. People did not think it was right that The Sun had printed the pictures of the naked prince, and were able to start drafting a release. By the time the survey had finished, 1.5 hours later, we were almost ready to send out the press release. Speed and timeliness of the survey resulted in coverage in the Press Gazette, New Statesman, Telegraph, and a range of other titles. Being part of the news agenda when your brand is related to the story provides the rationale for the press survey. For instance, Head, or Standard Life, Andy Murray's sponsors, could enhance the news story the next time Andy Murray wins a Grand Slam by releasing a survey-based PR story asking whether he should be included in the Queen's Birthday Honours List. The third tip for using surveys is when a brand can benefit by piggybacking upcoming news events. This involves planning for an upcoming event, knowing in advance your survey angle, and working to get your press release seen whilst the story is still fresh and current. This is somewhat easier than straight newsjacking, as you can integrate an element of pre-planning into the process. Example of using surveys to piggyback on a news event was the recent launch of the iPhone upgrade. The survey was planned in advance, with the final feature list inserted when it was announced in the States. The iPhone was launched in America at 6 PM UK time. The survey was running by 8 PM and concluded by 10 PM. The press release was written within 4 hours and the final release sent to the news desks early the next morning. The speed and timeliness of the software as a service approach meant we were able to get coverage into the press while it was still current and live, resulting in some great coverage in a variety of different titles. Telecom companies that sell accessories for mobile phones, i.e. covers or insurance, where they have a strong rationale for doing so, could launch an immediate release building on the story, whilst mentioning their brand in the context of the press release. Surveys for print are usually large, approximately 1,000. Our fourth tip, however, is that this does not always have to be the case. It depends on why you are using surveys. Small can sometimes be beautiful. A relatively small survey of one question to 200 people asked, "Who is your favorite dragon?" The survey with the answer, Peter Jones, was completed in under half an hour and tweeted out to Peter Jones, who then retweeted it to 500,000 followers. If you can establish a rationale between your client and the survey, this could be a relatively inexpensive way to help your client get a substantial retweet from a prolific tweeter. For instance, if your client was a retailer, the survey could be about best dressed celebrities on the red carpet, tweeted to the best dressed celebrity. If your client is a supermarket, the survey could be about which is the UK's favourite celebrity chef, tweeted to the favourite celebrity chef. And if your client is a TV channel, a survey of the UK's favourite comics, tweeted to the favourite comic, may get a retweet. Any one of these could result in your client's name being noticed by a huge number of followers in conjunction with a topical survey. Tip number 5 is to use research when you need consumer insight and you need to gauge public opinion. Perhaps the biggest crisis at the moment is the Qatar crisis that is running parallel to the World Cup. We have a survey of 2 questions running to 100 respondents every day. The survey is ongoing and shows that approximately 2/3 of people believe that Qatar should not be hosting the World Cup. The majority of these feel the way Qatar could have won the bid should preclude them from hosting it in 2022. And this chart shows the results of the second question in the survey, with the green line at the top showing the number of people who said the way Qatar won the bid may have been corrupt as being the reason why Qatar shouldn't hold the World Cup in 2022. We will be monitoring this crisis and assessing whether the actions of FIFA, Qatar, or events in Brazil have an impact on this number, and whether they manage to move the green line either up or down. Measuring the impact of forthcoming actions will show whether the crisis in Qatar is waxing or waning. Continuous research of this type can be set up in minutes and run until the direction of the crisis or its turning point has been established. Okay, so we'll go back and look at the results. The survey won't have finished, but we will have some results in. So if I go back and look at the results, we've got 12% of the survey finished already. And the results come. So at any point of time, as soon as the first respondent has answered the survey, you can go in and look at the results. And these results are running live. We've got 64 people in the last 10 or so minutes. Do you think you're currently saving for your retirement? You're just slightly more, saying no, they're not. You can then look by gender, so you can see that slightly more men saying yes, they are saving for their retirement compared to women. If you look by income, you'll see that the lower income group are the least likely to say they're currently saving enough for their retirement. You can also look at age range. So surprising number of young people, it's a very small base size still, but saying that they're currently saving for their retirement, currently believe they're saving enough for their retirement. You also look by location. So there are 4 demographic groups that you can look for. People in London much more likely to say they're saving for their retirement. The second question again, a lot of people, 30%, 50, almost 50% are going to continue working part-time or full-time, with probably a third, just less than a third, saying they're not sure what they're going to do. Again, if you're looking for a PR story, women are more likely to work either full-time or part-time than men. And if we look at age range, perhaps, age range, yep, there's whatever age range you are, there's a big body of people that are going to work either full-time or part-time. When the results are finally in, you have some other analysis options, but these only become available when all the results are in and the survey is finished. But you can filter the results by, so you can filter results by perhaps women age 18 to 29 and see how those compare to men age 18 to 29. So there's further ways you can dig down into the data. That concludes our webinar for this week. Just leaves me to give a quick reminder about webinars coming up. The next webinar will discuss the creative side of devising surveys. It will be held on June the 30th at 3 p.m. and it will cover starting with your dream headline, linking it to your brand, and aiming for a single nugget of information, with the aim of helping you develop your client as having a voice, a stance, and a position in the market. The final webinar, to be held on July the 7th at 3 p.m., will cover the rules that need to be followed for writing great surveys and how to find your nugget. Since our time is done, this just leaves me to say thank you for attending, and I hopefully see you at the same time next week. Thank you.